Hey everyone, in this video, we're going to go over a little bit more about components and props, as well we'll go over two React hooks, useState and useEffect, and how to use them. So let's go ahead and get started. So I have my project open here, it's running. I have my terminal window here running the project and my text editor, so we should be ready to get started. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and clean up some of the code from last time. So inside our app.js here, I'm going to go ahead and delete a lot of this stuff from the previous video. It'll be on the GitHub on that branch. You can find the link to it at the beginning, the starting code link for this video, as well as the ending code from last video. But just to make this a little more cleaner, I'm going to get rid of all this stuff here. We don't really need it, so we'll get rid of all that. So in this video, we're going to build a new component. And we're going to kind of build a form. So I'm going to go ahead and create a new file here and save it as form.js. This will be like a simple login form is what we'll do here. So what we'll do is first I'll go ahead and generate a new component. And I have my this React snippets installed for Sublime Text Editor. So I can do RCC and enter, and it will generate one for me. That's not correct. Let's do that again. It should be the stateless functional component. There we go. So now we have this component. I'll delete the props out of there. And we go and save that. So if you don't have that, go ahead and just create this, import React from React, and then you can create a const form equals arrow function with all this. And then you export default form at the bottom. Okay, so we use this form. We can go ahead and build a simple login form. So inside this div here, I'm going to go ahead and create another div. And inside this div here, I'll create an input. And we'll do a type equaling, do text, and then we'll close that off. I'm actually going to go ahead and add a name as well. Name equals username. And then I'm going to go ahead and add a label as well. So up here, I'll add a label tag. And we'll do HTML4. We'll make it the same as our name down there. So we'll do username. And then the label text will just be username. Okay, we'll go ahead and copy this div down another time. Actually, we'll do two more times. So this one right here will be for the password. So I'll go ahead and change this here to password. We'll change this to password as well. And then this name will be password here. And then we'll change the type to also be password. That way it shows up the those circles and kind of the dots instead of the text showing up in our text field like a normal password field should. And then for this last div down here, we're going to change this to be a submit button. So we'll do an input, a type of submit, and then we can go ahead and close this off here, and then we'll do a value equaling to login. And just for consistency, I'm going to change these quotes here to be single quotes just to match everything else. And I'll do the same for all of these. So real quickly, just Control D to select all of these and change them to single quotes. There we go. Okay, we'll save that. Now we should be able to add this component to our app.js like we did last time. So we can go ahead and just do form like that, and then close off the tag, and I'll import it here at the top. So I'll do from // components or // components /form. Save that. Oh, sorry, I'm not sure what I'm doing here. It should be import form from that. Okay. Let's go back here now. Refresh the page. Looks like we have an error inside of our form here. Or no, inside of here. Oh, I still have this div here. Let's get rid of that div. Okay, now with just a form in there, let's go ahead and save this and come back. Okay, there we go. So now we have a username, password, and our login button right there. Okay, perfect. Now, first thing I want to talk about is props. So right now, all we've done is passed in just the component name and that nothing else. But what we can do is we can add different variables to this. So let's say we want to pass some text to our form to show within this component. And this may not be something you do in real life really, but this is just a good example to show you how this works. So I'll go to create a variable and I'll just call it prop text. You can call it whatever you want. And I'll say this text, I'll just say just example text. And then down here, what I can do is I can create a prop. So I'll do text, we'll call it text equals, put curly braces to pass in a variable like we've done before, and pass in prop text. And now what we'll do is we'll have access to this variable named text inside of our form component that we can then use. So to show how this works, we can go back to our form component. And these are all saved as props too. So if we pass in props to this form component here, I can then come down in here. Inside of here, I'll go ahead and do a p tag, and I'll just do curly braces to pass in a variable here. And we can do props.text, which is what we named it right here, text, and then save that, come back to our form here, and now it's showing example text. So what we're doing here is we're taking the text from this app component, the variable here, passing it into our form by putting a prop name equals that variable, in this case text, and then inside the form here we can access it within our props by doing props.text. You can also, to make this a little more easier to read, you can go ahead and destructure it by putting two curly braces and then put text. So what this will do is it will take our props.text and pull out the text and save it in its own variable. So then we can go ahead and just pass in just text into our component here, and it still works. So that's how we can pass data into this component. I just want to show a quick example about how that works, because that's something that's very useful and you use a lot within React. Okay, so now we've gotten through a little more about components and props. Let's go ahead and talk about React hooks. So a React hook is a new addition, and I think React 16, where you can add state and other React features without having to write a class. So you might be familiar with older versions of React where you create a class for each component and then you use the state object to save state values. But we can do the same thing with React hooks to save a state value. And I like this version a lot better, and it's a newer version that you'll see a lot. So let's go ahead and go over how this works. So what we can do at the very top of our component here, we can define a new variable for this hook. So do const, and then instead of just passing just a name, we'll put square brackets here, equals useState, which we'll import in a second. And what we'll do is inside this list here in the square brackets, first thing we got to set is a variable for this state value. So we want to set two state values, one for the username and one for the password. And so we'll do username first. This will be our username variable, and then put a comma and a space, and then go ahead and pass in a name of the function to change the state value. So I'll call it set username. So now what we have here is we have a variable. This will store the state value, and this will be used to update this value. So that's all we're doing here. And then inside of the parameters for this useState function, we can go ahead and set a default value, which I will, for this, since we're just talking about a form here, will be just an empty string. Now when you go ahead and import useState, and we import it from React. So we're right here in our import React from React. I'll put a comma, put curly braces here, and then put useState right there. Now I'm going to go ahead and copy this down one more time, and I'm going to go ahead and create a password state value as well. So do password and then set password. And once again, the default value will be an empty string. Okay, so now we go ahead and use these state values within our form. So what we'll do is we'll find the input for our username. And first I'm going to add one more prop here. We'll add a value, set that equal to username. So the value of this input will always be equal to what we set to our username state value up here. And then to update this and set it to that username value, we can use an onChange. Inside this onChange, we can set a function to be called every time we change this input value. So I'm going to go ahead and create an arrow function, arrow, and then put set username, which is the function name we defined up here within our useState hook. So then we'll use set username, and then we'll put a parentheses here. And then what do we want to set it to? We want to set it to e.target.value, which is the value of this input field. I'm going to go ahead and copy this down to my password field. Copy that and paste it right there. Change this to password, and change the on-change set username, change that to set password. Okay, let's go ahead and save this, make sure everything still works. Okay, looks good. Now, every time we update this field here, it should go ahead and update our state value, but right now we won't notice a change because we're not doing anything to show this, so we can update it, but nothing's happening. Let's go ahead and log it to the console every time those values change. Every time one of these two values change. And to do this, we can use something called useEffect. So I'm going to go ahead and import that from React as well, and we'll talk about the useEffect hook next. So now we have imported, we can go ahead and use it right down here. So I put it right below our useState hooks. So we'll do useEffect, and then there's no variable to set here. We just call the function, and then inside of here we pass in another function, just like that. And now this, if you're familiar with older versions of React, this works like component did mount, component did update, and component will unmount. So those different lifecycle methods, if you're familiar with older React, this is what useEffect does in functional components. And if you're not familiar with that, all you need to know is that it allows you to perform side effects when certain things update within your component. So in our case here, we want to go ahead and check every time these two variables are updated, we want to go ahead and run this useEffect function. So what we can do is inside of here, we can just put console.log. It will log our username and our password. We'll save that. We'll come back to our function here, and then we'll type something in here, test. And you see it logged test. Every time we type the character, it updated. And then our password, we can type password. And that works fine. But there's one more thing we can add to this useEffect function. After the function here, we can go ahead and add this array. Now, if we add an array with no arguments, we come back here, update the function, nothing logs out. And that's because what we're doing here is we're checking for these variables inside this array to run this function. So if these things update, it will run. If we pass an empty array, it will run only once when it first loads. And since these two values are empty, it's just not logging anything. Now, inside this array here, if we add username and password, now we're saying check the username and password state variables. If those update, run this function. We'll save that. Now we'll come back here, reload the page here, do test, it updates, and then we'll do any password, and an update password there as well. So now we're logging this every time whatever is inside of this array is updated. And that's useEffect. That's how you update the component when certain things happen. Hopefully that makes sense. If not, I'll put the links to the documentation for useState and useEffect in the description if you need to read up more on that. But that is two of probably the most common useEffect and useState, the two most common hooks you'll use in React. So hopefully that helps you understand what those are doing. And if not, let me know in the comments. I'll try to answer any of your questions. But that is it for this video. Hopefully that was helpful. All the code will be in the description below, as well as links to documentation and anything else you might need will also be down there. So thank you for watching, and I hope to see you in the next video.